Hello everybody, I wanted to do a quick video about this AC compressor. This is a 2.5 liter Volkswagen AC compressor. You can see it's got dual pulleys. On this engine you have to have the drive belt from the crankshaft, which goes on to this outer pulley right here. The crankshaft only drives this pulley. You have to have that in order to drive everything else on the motor, which drives off of this pulley. So the AC compressor is kind of something hard to get away from. And they make it AC. There's a company that makes an AC compressor delete bracket for the 2.5 that comes with a custom pulley, and then it uses the AC compressor bracket from a 2.0T that you can buy from the factory, and that's just a bracket to hold up the pulley. There's 3 bolts that hold this to the bracket on the block. You can see 1, 2, 3 right there. Well, we can do pretty much what they're doing. I'm pretty sure that it's probably even lighter when we get done with this than that billet bracket is. But let's have a look right now. 0 pounds. So we're reading 12.2 pounds here. 195.5 ounces. That's just the AC compressor complete. So what we're going to do is a couple stages of gutting and lightening to see how much weight we can remove and if it's worth it to just keep the stock AC compressor but gut it. Alright, so here's the tools you're going to need to take it apart. You need some kind of pliers, regular pair of pliers. You need a set of snap ring pliers that can do inner and outer, or a couple different snap ring pliers. There's a inner one that you compress here, and then you'll see in here there's another one. We got a 14mm socket, a 12mm socket, an 8mm socket, and of course can't work on a Volkswagen without a T30 Torx. So those are the tools, plus this hammer. You never know when a good ball peen might come in handy. Alright, so we're going to start on the pulley end here. These pliers are to take this rubber cap off with, so you just need to squeeze that rubber cap there and pull it out of there. Okay, then you see that we got a 14mm nut right there. You're going to want to take that 14mm nut off. And also you see that some oil leaks out of here. That's AC compressor oil. Alright, there's that nut. That's a lock nut. That's off. Now let's take these T30s out. Okay. Take those guys out of there. So I ended up just hammering it a little bit. You can see that this is splined on the inside. If you can make that out or not. These splines drive the center shaft inside here. So when we remove this piece, the outside pulley is completely free from everything inside. And if you look closely, there's a bearing here on the outside. That bearing actually fully supports this outside pulley. So at this point, we have just a pulley that's independent from the guts inside the compressor. So we could actually go ahead and take this off. I might need a bigger pair of, these will do. Take that big snap ring off right there. Okay. And then this pulley pulls right off. You can see there's a big bearing in here. Pretty nice big bearing. You could even find a part number on that thing probably and get another one and press a new one in. So that's the pulley housing with the big nice roller bearing on it. You can see that roller bearing is supported here on the outside front snout of this AC compressor and held in with a snap ring. Alright, So the next thing we want to do is we want to try to make this lighter. And the way to make it lighter is to get rid of the guts. So if we simply take this off, you can take this off, and that at that point you're no longer driving the internals, and your rotating mass is lowered. So at that point you're just spinning this pulley, and everything inside the compressor is disengaged, and so you only have the rotating mass of this pulley and not all the guts inside. So you have already freed up horsepower and have the equivalent horsepower reduction of any aftermarket AC delete bracket, because you're disengaged from the compressor at that point. But we can make this, which now is effectively just a pulley bracket, we can make it lighter by taking the stuff that's inside out. So let's do that. Don't lose your big snap ring. Okay, so now in order to get the internals out, we need to take these long bolts out. So these bolts have 8mm head, and they go all the way through to the end of the compressor, and they just are holding all this together in a sandwich. So these bolts are in tension here throughout the case, and these are what support the tilting, or like the tendency of the belts and things to pull the compressor up like that. You have this back bolt. So these bolts hold the tension to this back bolt onto the block. We need to take them out first. So I'm going to carefully hit them with this little impact. So pull these out, and of course we need to save these. Save the washer too. There's a washer on there. There's going to be some oil because the AC compressor, the AC Freon charge, has oil in it that lubricates the compressor guts. Take those guys out of there. All right. Now we've got to take the whole thing apart. All right. And what you're going to see here is all the pistons. See these pistons? If I stick this, well, I kind of already pulled it out, but there's a swash plate in here. You can see as this turns, the pistons don't go around. Pistons go in and out. You can see the piston bores here. As this turns, you can make out that the pistons are going in and out, right? So we pull that out. There's the guts. So here's all the stuff that we're going to eliminate from the housing. There's the inside of the front housing. That's stripped. There's a little thrust bearing here for the front half. We don't need that anymore. All of this stuff will come out. It's just the pistons are stuck. Pistons get a little sideways in there, and so they don't want to come out because they're such a tight fit. But you can see there's a little seal. Here's the piston. There's a little seal right there. These are the little bushings or bearings that ride on the swash plate, and then that swash plate just moves the piston in and out of these bores. Okay, so that's effectively pretty much stripped right there. Here's that whole rotating mass. There's that swash plate there. So as we spin this around, you get angle induced here. It's variable displacement AC compressor. And all of this is controlled by the coolant control valve. So controls how much is allowed to be input, and that will adjust the displacement for how much is being pumped out. So there you go. So we don't need that anymore. These are the valves. They're like a reed valve in sheet metal. So there's one on the opposite side of this plate. One is intake. This one on this side is the intake, so it'll pull it in. And the one on the other side of this hole would be the exhaust. So if you wanted to remove these, which you don't need to, you could take this bolt out, take these plates out. But if you do that, you need a space. You need this much space in the housing to line up this rear bolt. So it's okay to just leave that in there. So anyway, all of this stuff is the guts that we don't need. I'm gonna clean up this whole mess, and then I'll put this back together and we'll weigh and see how much it weighs. Okay, so this is all the rotating stuff right here in this box, and then the pulley. So total rotating mass 4.95 pounds, and this is the stuff we're not going to reuse. So we cut the rotating mass in half, 2.5 pounds, just with this pulley. Now I did put these T30 bolts back in. Those are the bolts that hold the springs on for the drive, just because otherwise it's only held together by these rivets, and this gives you 6 attachment points instead of only 3 rivets, so it should be much better. So there you see, cut in half, maybe a little less than half, 2.3 it says now, so 37 ounces. So that's how much rotating mass we reduce. Let's see how much we reduce total. When you're reassembling, again, I'm going to leave these valves in place because of the space. You have little pins in the centerpiece. These little pins here, 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 and here. And they line the housings up. So look for the holes. You got one here and one there for the back side. Okay. Get those lined up. And then the front side, here are the 2 holes. So you want to make sure that you get that lined up also. Okay, so that's all together. If you look closely here, you can see there's some dowels. These are to line this compressor housing up with the bracket that's on the block. So you want to leave those in place. Then we'll just put these bolts back in. Start them by hand. Make sure they go in straight. All right. Get my 8mm back out. I'm just going to gently okay. So that's the compressor housing back together, and then we're going to need the pulley. So this is now just a pulley bracket, right? So we'll put the pulley back on, slide it back on there, nice and easy. Put your snap ring back. Gotta switch my pliers around. Okay. Snap rings back. All right, so at this point you have reduced the rotating mass by half. and you just have basically an ugly AC delete bracket. You can still take this valve out, actually. I haven't done that yet. Let's see how much this weighs. Okay. $135.5 ounces. That is 8.4 pounds. And we can still lighten this thing up. So you could stop here. You could take this out. That's going to be probably down to 8 pounds maybe. But then, because now we effectively have a spacer here and more or less a spacer here, you can drill holes in this housing and lighten it further, because there's no reason for it to be fully enclosed. These bolts go through here, here, here. Those are holding those two pieces together. So everything here in between the bolts is extra mass that we don't need. But there you go. That's it if you want to do a quick one. That's a gutted AC compressor AC delete bracket. We went from 12.5, something like that, pounds down to 8.5 pounds, and we lost 2.5 pounds of rotating mass. So that's pretty cool already. All right. Okay, so kind of done here. I installed some holes in the case, took it apart and cleaned it up real good. I ended up taking this thing out, and that bolt is just there to hold the valves together. But once you take this out, you realize it's actually pretty heavy. Let's see, let me zero out the scale. Okay. That plate alone is 0.6 pounds. 10.5 ounces. So let's see what we get it down to. I think we started at 12.5 pounds. Now that it's got some holes installed and lightened, 111 ounces. I think we lost about 80 ounces there. Let's see. 3.15 kilograms. Look at that. 7 pounds. 6.9 pounds total. So, let me see what your aftermarket underdrive, your aftermarket AC delete bracket and pulley weigh. Anybody got one? You want to weigh it and let me know what you got? 111 ounces. So there you go. And really, if you wanted a spare, unless you wreck the car, you're not going to need this. So you could just get the pulley off a core if you need spares, because the bearing is what might fail. And you could probably go to a junkyard, which is where I got this whole thing. I got it for $70 at a junkyard. Go to a junkyard and just pull the pulley out, and they'll give you a price for just the pulley. And then you have spare. But I got the whole thing now. This one's a little more aggressively lightened than my the one that's on my car right now. But there you go. Couple of minutes of time. $70 for a junkyard compressor. 3.15 kilograms. 6.9 pounds. 111 ounces. That's your end result for your AC delete bracket. Works pretty well, I think. See you on the racetrack. Cheers.